Hey, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to repair this mess. We got quite a bit going on here with this rough old mortar bed, adhesive bed, torn brown paper, and holes. We're going to repair all that and show you how to do it right after this. Okay, what we have here is where somebody took a shower out of here and moved it over there and made a much bigger shower. So they've hired us to fix all this roughness because they were just going to cut it out and replace it, which is one option. But I told them I can go ahead and just fix this. So we're gonna do that on video, and I'm gonna show you the steps we do that, because we have to deal with this torn brown paper with this really rough surface. We got to get rid of a couple of holes, and we've got some old adhesive up here from tile. And yeah, it might be easier to just cut this out and replace it, but we're going to do this for you on video so you can see how to fix something like this. All right, and hey, if you like learning how to do it-yourself tasks like this, be sure to click that subscribe button down below the video. You see it down there? And after you click it, a bell will appear. Click that too, and you'll get notified each time we put out another one of these helpful videos for you. And we also have a join button right next to the subscribe button. If you'd like to join, you get exclusive benefits just for those who are part of our YouTube membership community. All right, now, one of the first things we need to do here is clean up a lot of this loose stuff. So what I would do is take a 6-inch knife or 4-inch, just some sturdy putty knife, and go around, find all the loose stuff like this, and just start getting rid of some of the excess. We're not trying to finesse it too much right now. We're just trying to get rid of some of this cruder stuff. And don't worry if you create a little bit more brown. And then along here is a silicone bead. We definitely need to get rid of that. And sometimes these are stuck really well because silicone does stick great. So you may have to scrape extra hard. And sometimes it's easier to just do this. And just cut it out, and then it'll scrape off and disappear. So do whatever's easiest for you guys. Okay, so I'm just gonna cut around these. I've decided this is easier. Just create the brown paper, and that'll be easier to deal with than scraping. Regular caulking will come off a lot easier, but silicone, it can be stuck really well. That's one of its advantages. It is basically a glue also. Okay, now we got a lot of that silicone off there. Actually, I see a hint of it right here. You want to get as much as you can because nothing really sticks to silicone. Now you see we're down to this brown paper where it's just torn everywhere. Now you have to treat this brown paper right, because see all these layers? There's multiple layers in here. And if you peel up one, you'll often find another one underneath it, and then you peel that one up and it's just another layer after layer. I don't know how many. Sometimes it seems like there's 30 of them, but the point is all this loose stuff has to come off. So you can do a little bit of scraping to get it. You could even sand it a little bit. Like you could try a sanding block like this, and sometime that will help. It'll get rid of some, but sometime it'll start bringing up more, but it usually helps a little bit. The key is you just somehow got to get all the loose stuff off. You see right there, it helped a lot. And when you feel like it's pretty much down to just tiny little bits that maybe are rolling up like that, you don't really want that much, but when you get down to this part, then we want to go ahead and treat it. Because if you put mud right straight over this, a lot of times what'll happen is the paper will bubble, like in this picture here. And if it bubbles on you and then it's dry, you scrape it off. A lot of times you put more mud on and it bubbles again. So I like to do this as a precautionary step because sometimes it won't bubble, but if it does, it really creates a nightmare for you. And when you have this many torn brown paper spots, I would go through and treat it all. So just make sure that not only is the torn brown paper all up, but if you have any loose edges like this, see how that's really not stuck? Often right around these edges, it's not stuck. That's where you take your knife and just cut. And then peel that up. And that way it doesn't, if you try and just peel it this way, all that will do is keep making more and more, because each time it's lifting a little bit, you tear, it leaves a little bit lifted right there. So go ahead and just cut around it. You're not hurting anything by cutting the sheetrock. And then what I recommend to treat this with is Gaurdz. And I'll put a picture of that on the screen, or this RX35. I use both. Happens today that I showed up on the job and neither one of them are in my trailer. I think the Gaurdz ferry took off with it. Okay, there, we pretty much have this all cleaned up. We got this all cut out and sanded. We got this all cut out and sanded. Okay, I want to show you that you need to kind of poke and prod at all the brown paper, because sometimes it can look fine like this section here, but watch. I don't know if you can see the movement, but see how it's totally not stuck. It just looks like it is, so you kind of have to poke and prod at everything, and that's why I prefer to just cut a circle around everything, then you know it's all solid. And the next step, because of this roughness, is we want to go over it and scrape it. We're not really trying to remove all this. If it happens to come off, we might take it, but I'm mostly looking to get the little peaks, and we're gonna skim coat this, so things like that will make you have to put it on way thicker. I'd be a little wary about using this too much. It might damage it. You don't want to damage your finishing blades, but you can. It probably will survive if you're careful. Or you could get out a paint scraper like this. These are actual paint scrapers. This is like a carbide blade. It's very tough. So they're good at scraping. Sometimes it's kind of too aggressive and wants to dig in. If that's the case, use that knife like I showed you, a taping knife or a putty knife. So just do whatever works for you. Now, one other way you could do this is to sand it with some really coarse sandpaper like 80, or in this case, I'm gonna go ahead and sand this with my 24 grit sandpaper that I use to sand off popcorn ceilings, because I think that's gonna give me the best, quickest result. And my sander's sitting right here. Now this is a Porter cable drywall sander. I'll put a link to all these tools I use, the common ones, in the description down below. Got hearing protection on because it's gonna get a little bit noisy. 24 grit sanding disc. You can only buy these in packs of like 25 for $80. This one disc has lasted me over a year. So if you want one of these, I'll put a link to these. I sell these on eBay so that you don't have to buy so many. You can also do this with a cheaper drywall sander. I'll put a link to some of those down below, but you do need a good vacuum that's rated for drywall so the dust doesn't just blow on through. Okay, that feels much better. We're not having them little peaks coming out. So now the next step would be I'd go around and treat all this with the Gaurdz. All right, now we're ready to treat these torn paper areas. So I went home and got two products. We're gonna treat it with two different ways, this bullseye shellac and then we're going to use this Gaurdz product. And I'll put a link to these in the description down below if you want to check them out. And if you do decide to purchase anything using our links, we make a small commission on it, but it doesn't cost you anything more. Had to get my glasses. This one says allow to dry for 1 hour prior to painting or finishing. So that's fairly quick. But what I noticed on the Gaurdz earlier was I actually haven't used either one of these because I've always used the RX35. Okay, this says drying time. Dries to the touch in 30 minutes. Apply the finish coat or wallpaper after 3 hours. Now, I can't wait 3 hours, so if it dries to the touch in 30 minutes, in an hour, I'm just gonna go ahead and coat it and see what happens. Okay, another disadvantage to this product is it may cost you more per square foot if you have to do a whole lot. The big thing we're gonna look at here is the smell. If you're working in a customer's home and you spray a bunch of this, it might annoy them. Might even affect them if they have asthma or things like that. So it's usually not a low odor product, even though it might say it on here, but I don't think it does, but it is shellac. So there's that. And if you look right here, it says extremely flammable liquid and vapor. So you do not want to use this anywhere near an ignition source. If you're in a bathroom, a laundry room, or anywhere where you're close to an open flame like a water heater, a hydronic boiler system, or fireplaces, anything, this is more dangerous. So that's why I prefer the Gaurdz and the RX35. But we're gonna try this a little bit and see how it does. Of course, the other advantage here is that you can spray it on, but brushing it on isn't that hard, so. I want a pretty solid coat so that it soaks in. So I'm probably not going to do this in the future because of that odor and that danger, but it does work. Okay, now you'll see this stuff looks like watered down glue. It's not. I know some people think it is, but it really isn't, but it's very watery because it's not meant to put a surface film on. It's meant to penetrate, and watery is going to penetrate better. Now I just apply it with a disposable brush because when I'm done, I'm going to toss it. But you could use any old brush. You could roll it on too if you've got a lot of surface. But now, let me compare the odor if I can get away from that stinky stuff. There's very little, so much better. And I hear comments all the time on the brown paper, just use Kills or this and that. Well, I've tried a lot of different things, folks, because I have done so many of these, and then one day I stumbled across the RX35 in a store, and it said it was for damaged areas like torn drywall, paper, things like that. I tried it, and if you use it right, give it the proper time to dry, it works really good. And again, you're still occasionally going to get some bubbles because you couldn't tell that paper was already lifting. And if that happens, you're just going to have to deal with it because it is going to happen. Because it's hard to tell sometime if you need to peel that a little further or if it's good to go. I generally just put one coat of this on, but if you really want, the ideal way would be to put 2 coats on. So we'll come back in 3 seconds and put a coat on all this. Now first I'm going to run this pan out for you. Some of it, I've got 20 minutes here, just one full pan. It's probably going to take me about 4 pans to do this. I don't have an empty bucket handy, so I'm just going to do it this way. I was supposed to tape that hole anyway. Now I remember. So we got another chance for fiber fuse. Now if you're coating in the angles, you want to square up that point right there on your knife. You don't want it like this, and you definitely don't want it like that, so you're kind of squaring it up and that helps clean it off the other side as you're pulling your knife down. But I am going to get out my skim coating blade and hit this with that, but I think I'm going to go ahead and mix up another pan and spread that first. So what do I mean by my skim coating blade? Well, I have a skim coating blade here, and I'll put links to these on Amazon. They're 24 inches wide. You can get them in 48 inch, 36, 24. This one's 24, and it's got a flexible blade backed by a more rigid backing, and it does a pretty good job usually if the wall's fairly flat at smoothing this stuff out. Prefer to go this way, so let's do that. No, maybe better this way. Okay, why am I using this skim coating blade? Well, obviously it's wider, and oh, don't drip. So it should give me less lines, these lap marks and that I have to smooth out. So that's the main reason in this case, and it does help float things out flatter because of the width of it. There, I like that. All right, I'm going to continue skim coating, and I'll come back when I show you how to tape the inside angle, which will be in about 3 seconds, so I'll be right back. All right, now we've let this set up about 45 minutes. You can see it's firm everywhere, but you can see by the color it's still wet. That's all we want. You do not want to let this dry and try and sand it, because yes, you can, but it sands really hard. It's not easy sand. It says it is, but that's compared to Durabond, which is like never sand. So the easiest way to smooth it out a little bit before the next coat, because there's always some bumpy stuff, some ridges and that. If you scrape it, sometimes you can get by with that. But I found that a lot of times when I'm scraping, I'll accidentally gouge it somewhere. So I found that if I stand my knife up like this and scrape it this way, it's a lot safer. So you look for the high points like this one, and you see how it just shaves it off real finely. It does a better job. It leaves it smoother even. So I think I'll go over most of it. Okay, I think that's pretty good, so let's go ahead and put a coat of mud on it. Okay, I'm going to do this with my 14-inch knife again. And I start out with a heavy knife full. So, quick knife lesson here for those of you who are new to this. When you're spreading a lot of mud and you want to spread it far like that, you get a big load on your knife. Make sure it's not too drippy. You can see I've got this pretty thick. It barely moves when I do that. Start it at a steeper angle, and as you come down the wall, you push very firmly to spread this heavy mud, and then you lean it over more and more. The faster I lean it, the thicker it puts it on. Now it can take some practice, but I've spread about 50,000 boxes of mud or something. So I think I got the practice in finally, but I might need to practice a little bit more. Now I need to retire and do YouTube full time so I can just pass all this stuff on to you guys. Shit, I might get hit by a unicorn tomorrow and won't ever get to share it with you. So as usual, I like to feather the edges. And then because this has got a slight hump up here at the top, I don't really want to pull from the top completely. So by going across that hump, it'll give me a little bit better rounding and floating of it. And then I can either go totally sideways across the whole thing, or I could go up and down. Now when you're coating across, here's a little trick. If you do this wrong, you'll get that edge. You don't want that edge. You want a lap mark, and I'll show you a picture of it because it's sometimes hard to see. So the leading edge is the one that should have slightly more pressure. Now that's where experience and a touch comes in. I can change it as I'm going and suddenly get an edge, take it away, put a lap mark. So slightly more pressure on the bottom side, and that way the top side is just kind of floating, and you're pushing pretty firmly when you're doing this because you're laying your knife over pretty flat. The flatter you lay it, the more pressure you can put on your knife. If you stand it up, you can quickly wipe it off with very little pressure, but it's really hard to do. If you push it like this, it just floats it. That's why we call this floating it out. Okay, that's one wall. You can see that all of the defects have disappeared. Tomorrow, all you gotta do is let this dry, sand it, touch up any other defects that show up, like right here, you probably can't see it, but there's some pinholes forming, or bubbles. Those form whenever you go over paint. So that's the first place you'll see them. And you'll sometimes get them out here, and you'll have other voids. So you go through, put a light on it, shine it down the wall, look for the defects after you've sanded it. You fix those and you're ready for texture. If you're gonna texture it, if you're gonna do a smooth finish, I suggest you watch my level 5 finish because there is more steps after this. Hey, if that helped you out and you like this kind of video, be sure and click that subscribe button, and right after that you'll see a bell pop up, and click the bell. That way you get notified each time we put out a video like this. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. I like sharing this stuff with you. So I'll see you on the next one. Take care, everybody.